We continue our coverage of defining moments 2015, and now on to the at times tumultuous, at times way too static, but always tense political scene. Now here to talk about Korean politics this past year are our well-trusted political correspondents, Ji-won and Ji Myung-kil. Hi guys.
Hello, Conn-young.
Good evening, Conn-young.
Right, so politics team, another eventful year at the nation's parliament. I suppose towards the end of the year, it was more of eventless, and that was the problem.
Indeed, Conn-young, but before we jump into the details, I made a wrap-up of main political highlights of year 2015. Let's take a look. The year's first major event came in January when President Park Geun-hye appointed Lee Wan-koo as Prime Minister. Despite being dogged by a series of allegations, Lee earned the National Assembly's approval in mid-February. But Lee was forced to step down just 2 months into his post over a bribery scandal involving a dead businessman and other high-profile figures. On April 29th, by-elections were held in 4 constituencies nationwide. The ruling Saenuri Party performed well, winning 3 of the 4 seats up for grabs. The main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy had a nightmare, failing to win any seats at all. The ruling party's clear victory gave it and the conservative government a mandate to push ahead with their reform agenda. It was this backdrop that provided a breakthrough to long-stalled plans to reform the nation's debt-ridden civil servant pension plan. Thanks to the bill, the government will save some $300 billion over the next 70 years. In June, a bill allowing Parliament to request changes to government decrees passed the National Assembly. The bill enraged the presidential office, and President Park immediately vetoed it. The ensuing controversy ended with the Saenuri Party's floor leader Yoo Seung-min resigning the following month. Former Justice Minister and Chief Prosecutor Hwang Kyo-won became the country's next prime minister in mid-June, taking a spot that had been filled on a temporary basis by Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan. In September, the National Assembly's 100-day regular session began. Lawmakers had a full plate of tasks to get stuck into, including redrawing the nation's electoral map, but the rival parties have yet to reach a compromise. History textbooks were in the headlines in October. There was a firestorm of controversy over the government's announcement that it was going to reintroduce a single state-issued history textbook into secondary schools from 2017. The government argued the current system was too left-leaning, but critics, academics, and the opposition parties said it was an attempt to distort Korea's history. Korea mourned the death of former President Kim Il-sung in November, bidding farewell to the pro-democracy figure with a state funeral. Arguably, the biggest story in December was Ahn Cheol-soo's defection from the main opposition NPAD, the party he helped to co-found.
Well, I guess some of these issues that are still pending in Parliament, such as the redrawing of the electoral map. Now, Ji-won just walked us through various political events that happened this year, but Myung-kil, let's delve in a little more further. Now, with the first event of the year, main event was the resignation of former Prime Minister Lee Wan-koo.
That's right. Lee Wan-koo stepped down in April, becoming the shortest-serving prime minister since the 1980s. He was in office for just 63 days. He was embroiled in a bribery scandal over allegations he accepted $27,000 during a parliamentary by-election in 2013 from a businessman who hanged himself in April. The bribery list left behind Song Han-jung was a huge blow to the political realm, as it named lawmakers from rival parties and several of President Park Geun-hye's close allies.
Oh, right. I guess a very unusual turn of events following this, because in July, President Park Geun-hye's relations with her governing party began to sour, and it led to the resignation of floor leader Yoo Seung-min.
Yeah, that's right, Conn-young. It was actually the first time she actually declared war on her own party lawmakers for their cynical political gains. Saenuri Party former floor leader Yoo Seung-min pushed the president to her limits when he passed a revision bill to the National Assembly Act, when he knew she was against it. The revision strengthened lawmakers' authority to demand a change in administrative legislation, such as presidential decrees. In June, she vetoed the bill and demanded Yoo step down, calling him a traitor who only takes care of himself.
Well, some very strong words there, but even today, it seems like ties between the nation's top office and the ruling party, I guess the National Assembly as a whole, aren't too positive or too good.
Yes, since November, President Park Geun-hye's patience has been running out as her key bills to help revise Korea's economy are stuck in Parliament. The bills are aimed at overhauling Korea's labor market and strengthening Korea's service industries. The government says the legislation will help create jobs for young people, but the opposition criticizes them as fake livelihood bills. Other key bills are also in limbo, such as those designed to improve North Korea's human rights, counterterrorism, and readjust Korea's electoral districts.
Well, making headlines towards the end of the year, so for us, very recent, have been, the falling apart of the main opposition bloc with, I suppose, the defection of former MPAD leader Ahn Cheol-soo.
That's correct. Already 10 lawmakers quit the Minju Party of Korea since the high-profile departure of former co-leader Ahn Cheol-soo earlier this month. Current party chief Moon Jae-in refused to accept Ah's proposal to hold a party convention to elect a new leader in preparation for April's general election. Therefore, Ahn quit the party to create his own opposition force. And unfortunately, the Minju Party continues to struggle with feuding factions.
Right, Myung-kil, and another issue that we've been having in the newsroom and as an English newsroom is the fact that we weren't sure how to refer to the Democratic Party, the 더불어 Democratic Party, because they didn't have an English name up until yesterday.
Yeah, that's true. Yesterday, during the general meeting, Moon Jae-in, the current chief of the Minju Party for Korea, he actually announced that he would change his name from 더불어 Democratic Party to the Minju Party for Korea. And, the opposition bloc, they're mired in a very strong factional fuse. And, we would have to see whether they'll be able to cope with, by just revamping their title of their party's name. But, we would have to see.
Right, brand new name, a brand new image. So, Ji-won, tell me about your life at the National Assembly covering Parliament for the past year.
Well, the life as a journalist at the National Assembly is pretty hectic because we have to watch and follow every morning meeting by both political parties, and there are some political announcements by politicians. So, it's very stressful at the same time, but looking back the whole year at this point, I guess, through this political strives and continual standoffs between the parties, all the important decisions of the country were made through the assembly. So I guess it's all very important process.
Right, and also a very exciting time to be covering Parliament as a journalist.
Right, and also another thing that's so hectic about the National Assembly is that there's so many committees and there's so many abrupt meetings that sometimes you would have to wait for hours and hours just to get the results. And another thing that's really painstaking is that sometimes you would have to listen to lawmakers scream at government officials, and you would have to keep on following up, like what responses the government officials will give you. And apart from that, after the day is over, issues keep on developing and developing. And when you sit down at the table to write your piece at the end of the day, you're bombarded with so much information. And this is pretty much how life is like at the National Assembly.
Well, we will continue to rely on you two for full coverage of the nation's Parliament in 2016 as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.